Meet me at the Musial with Alan and Daniel. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. Everyone come gather round, listen to your favorite sound. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. We'll talk the games and all the rest, about the team that we love best. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. We're gonna talk about the Cardinals all night long.
Good evening. Welcome into another edition of Meet Me at Musial. I'm your host, Daniel Shopta at C70. Alan is still doing the baseball thing. We've got another discussion with him at the end of the show, so stick around for that. But in his seat tonight is Richard McGill. You'll find Richard on the Playing Catch Pod with him and his son Truman. You'll also find him at Richard McGill 89. I forgot to look this up. Is that right?
Yeah, it is. Yep.
Okay. Look at me. I actually know something every once in a
Hey,
while. How you doing tonight, Richard?
I'm great, Daniel. How are you?
I'm doing well. And before we get into Cardinals stuff, y'all, am I right? Y'all just hit an anniversary. Was it 1 or 2 years on the
Yeah,
podcast?
it's just one. Yeah, just one.
one.
So we're still in the shallow end and trying to feel our way and find our voice. But it's been fun. It's been fun, and trying to balance everything with a high school teenager and fans of his time or what he thinks are important. Sometimes finds it difficult, but we're trying to ramp up a little bit now that we've hit that 1 year mark, and he wants to do a little more stuff on different platforms and have more of a set schedule where maybe we record Sunday mornings before we go to church. But yeah, it's been fun. It's something that I wanted to start at once he turned 16. I noticed he wasn't sitting on the couch with me watching the Cardinal games as much as he used to be, and so it was a way for us to connect and just the whole father son thing with baseball and how that's important in so many families that it just kind of fit, and he's done a great job with it.
Yeah, y'all have done a nice job with that. It's very interesting. It's different, very different dynamic in general, and partly because I think you're one of not only you're the only father son show, but you're one of the only shows that has both parts in the same room, right? I mean,
Yeah.
most of the time we're recording like right now. I'm here, Arkansas. You're off there in Illinois. I mean, we're states away.
I'm
Because
Missouri.
I am
No,
Missouri. Yeah,
okay,
no.
don't.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, don't.
Sorry about that. I know how it
Just
gets. I know
kidding.
how it is. So,
But yeah,
but
it is a different dynamic. I'm starting to figure out now from a hardware standpoint what I need to be able to do something like this with him on with me. But it's such a different setup because I mean our microphones are literally less than 3 feet away from each other, and so there is that nobody can see us. We don't record the video part, but being able to just give him a look or whatever is easy. I mean, sometimes I feel like we're too just stiff, and so we need to have a little more fun like we do when we're not on. But there's a point where he doesn't want to be embarrassed by his friends that might listen too. So we fight that a little bit. I noticed the other day that a team he plays high school baseball, and his team brought in a different pitcher in relief, and I think the other team thought it was him because one thing that his friends started doing a lot was saying baseball, because that's how our opening starts, with just me saying the word baseball. And so this other team, like 6 or 7 of the players just started going baseball, and I thought they really think that's Truman out there, but and it wasn't. So sorry to Colt, but it's been fun. I hope it's something that we can continue to do once he goes off to college, and I think it will will be, and it's just it for me as a dad, it's very special.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, definitely. Once they get off the call, and I know you've done this, but having that chance to have a regular conversation, on a set day, especially if you do get us, like a Sunday morning or Saturday nights or whatever it may be, that'll mean a lot.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. As you're finding out,
So
I'm sure.
yeah, a little bit. Mine's running around right now, but he texts me all the time, so I guess it's okay.
Yeah, yeah. I'll get a lot more text than actual voice. So
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure I would have been the same if we
oh,
had texting
absolutely,
back then.
absolutely.
I know my college roommate called his mother, especially every night, and I was like,
Mm,
man, that's too much,
time
But
to cut the cord. Yeah,
yeah, but I'm sure if we could text, then we text more often than I would have called for sure.
absolutely.
But
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was also
for
home a
sure.
lot, so that I guess it didn't matter too much. Um, anyway, so yeah, we're shifting here now into the last week of spring training. In fact, a week from tonight, we'll have our first regular season game in the books, right, for the Cardinals. It's it's one of those things we spend all winter waiting and waiting, waiting, and all of a sudden here we are, within the shadows of opening day. Um, what did I mean? And I don't know. Maybe you've had a chance to watch a little bit more. Um, than I have. But what are you taking away so far from the spring for the Cardinals?
I thought about that earlier, assuming you would ask that, and I think the, really the one word that I can use to describe it is underwhelming. Kind of like the
Mm,
off season, I mean, it's
hmm
just nobody's really just scorching the ball. Nobody's pitching. I mean, I guess some guys are pitching well, but especially some of the relievers that are fighting for a spot on the team. But offense, and I watched some of today's game, and just Goldie kind of still looks a little lost like he did last year, really chasing stuff on the outer half, and um, none of the starters have really done well. We've seen Carlson playing well. Of course, Victor Scott the second is the talk of camp, really. But we just haven't seen a lot of that. And of course, Sonny Gray, the biggest addition of the offseason, got hurt early on, and I know he's making good progress to get back, but we really haven't seen him much. And so just kind of, and I guess maybe after last year and having the best record, maybe it's a good sign. I don't know. Maybe everybody's saving it for the season, but just and some of it's underwhelming because we haven't seen a lot. I mean, there just
Right.
haven't been a lot of games broadcast. Seems like less than usual. I know it's probably not, but
No.
I don't know. Underwhelming just seems to be the key term for me.
I think
What
that's a
about
good.
you?
Uh, I think that's a good way of putting it. I really hadn't given it as much thought, but you're right. I mean, this time last year, Jordan Walker had that great first half of camp and was,
Hmm.
doing that where we're talking about whether he's going to make the roster, and of course he does. Mason Wynn had a great camp all the way through.
Probably
Had
better
some,
than
just
Walker.
exciting.
Yeah,
Oh, I think he did. I
yeah,
mean, there's no doubt, especially when Walker tailed off in the last couple of weeks. But we knew that Wynn wasn't going to make the team, and there was just, I mean, especially with Paul DeYoung there was just no reason for him to make the team. It's very much like the argument I think for Victor Scott, the
yeah,
second now, to be
yeah.
not making the team. Um, but there were people that you got excited about that you wanted to see, and you're right. There's really not been that, and maybe it's because I don't know. Maybe it's because we have seen a lot of the regulars play,
Hmm.
and they're not, even if they're doing well, they're not necessarily going to bring that same sort of level of excitement. I think it's you look at this, and I'm pulled up the stats, and Dylan Carlson has 3 home runs. Jose Fermin is second with 2, and then it's 1 for everybody else,
Yeah,
and it's just
yeah.
not, you know, factor in whatever you want in all that, but I just don't think that's not the way we expected spring to go.
No, and I think the questions surrounding the club really had nothing to do with the offense, and the offense has
Mm-mm.
just been like you. I mean, that right there, Fermin and Carlson leading the way, two guys that heading into spring training, one didn't see starting, but for me, you didn't even see making the team, and still may not. So yeah, for the regulars to have 1 or 9 and just I don't know, it's weird. And again, I'm not a guy that gets into spring training stats meaning a whole lot.
Right.
Um, you know, uh, Arenado could have 30 at bats and 15 hard lineouts, and his numbers aren't
Mm-hmm.
great, but it's the way he's hitting the ball. I don't know. I just haven't seen it, but
Right.
that's I don't put a lot of stock into it. I would like to see a little more balls hit over the fence because I think they're capable of that. Um, I'm definitely a guy that felt like last year, kind of the way that Donovan and Newt went, they kind of were
Mm-hmm.
the non-names that kind of drove the offense, really. Them getting on base and that. And so Newt's been out. Um, Donovan's shown healthy and played left field today, which is great, coming off the elbow surgery. So, but I don't know. And the pitching, I mean, not that I was too excited about Lynn or Gibson. You
Mm-hmm.
kind of know what they're going to be. But Gibson certainly hasn't looked great. Lynn's only pitched a couple of times in actual games. So it's really the interesting thing coming into it for me was what's going to happen in the bullpen with the 3 or 4 slots that they're going to have, and maybe that's taking shape now, but it's still not clear. So that's kind of the unknown that maybe we'll have a little excitement as we come down this last week.
Yeah, I think that's possible. So, and again, with the Middleton injury coming in, just what this time last
Hmm.
week or so, that
Yeah.
that kind of threw a little bit of a wrinkle into the things. But it's also, you want those guys to go north, but you also know how much the churn's going to come in that bullpen, right?
Oh,
So,
oh yeah. Yeah.
if there's a guy, except for Ryan Fernandez, who's a Real 5 guy, who if he doesn't make it, then obviously that changes the equation. But
Hmm.
everybody else, it's like, okay, well, they're not going north. Maybe a Nick Robertson. Maybe you're big on Nick Robertson, and you say, yeah, I think he should go north. But there's a real good chance he's going to be up by the end of April or the beginning of May, and get his shot then because they're just going to rotate. If or there's going to be injuries or whatever the case may be. These guys are going to continue to turn a little bit. So I don't know if
Yeah.
they'll do that as much offensively.
I think, yeah. I think that you're absolutely correct. We're going to see that Memphis shuffle or shuttle, either way,
Mm.
however you want to put it. Both work. Um, and I'm right there with you. Fernandez, Rule 5, you expect him to make it, and I think he's been pretty good. O'Brien, Robertson,
Mhm.
those are guys that kind of stand out. But I think people forget about Palante. Um, and maybe he's more secure with the injury to Middleton, but
Mhm.
adding Middleton kind of late, just I think they did well to provide depth for those 3 or 4 spots that are going to be rotating through the year, and providing the depth for guys getting injured if Gallegos or Helsley go down. So I think I really like what they did with the bullpen. It's
Mhm.
but you're right. Opening day is going to be different than 10 days from opening day, and by the end of April and all that, it's going to be a flowing situation throughout the season, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, you do hope that somebody, like a Riley O'Brien comes in and, you know, just claims a spot where they can't send them down. Um, but there's a good chance they're gonna be good enough. They're gonna have their moments, and then something's gonna happen, and somebody's gonna have to go be down in Memphis for a while and then back up, or whatever the
Hmm.
case may be. It's just nature of the game to some degree. Um, enough so that they've put rules in to try to limit it to some degree, and
Yeah, yeah.
I guess it works. You just have to find 3 or 4 guys that you can option instead of just one nowadays.
Right, right. Yeah, and I think O'Brien's the guy that for me maybe is the most exciting from a potential standpoint. and he may fall flat on his face. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, you do hope somebody grabs, one or two spots, but yeah, it's a long season. We know people are going to get hurt. So again, I like the depth that they've done, and didn't go after a lot of names. Middleton and Kittredge were kind of guys that have proven themselves. But other than that, they didn't really go after names, and I'm okay with that. I don't like spending a lot of money on bullpen pieces, and they haven't done well doing that in the past. So I really like what they did.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're looking at less than 10 innings from all these guys, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
all in spring, so it's really hard to know. Fernandez has 8, O'Brien has 8, Robertson has 8, Romero has 8. So they're all right in that range of those guys that you're talking about. Maybe trying to battle. It's like, how do you make a really great decision on 8 innings who they may have been facing, triple A team people, or they may have been facing double A people, or they may have been playing major league people, just depending on, when they came into the game and what the situation was. And granted, I mean, I know that the managerial staff and all them are judging them not just on their stats, but
right,
you're right,
right,
underlying numbers, but also, hey, they know what kind of quality of people they faced. But still, it's 8 innings. You just can't
right.
do it.
Yeah, and you wonder how much I hadn't really thought about it till you start saying those innings, but you wonder how much they're looking into some of the data, on spin rates
Mhm.
and how much things are breaking and just trying to piece together. Okay, well, this guy's fastball has an RPM of this or whatever, a spin rate of this. Eh, some of that's got to play into it, but they also knew some of that coming in, knowing, when they signed some of these guys or traded for them. So I don't know. It's interesting. I don't envy those making the decisions, but again, uh, with that depth, they can. If somebody doesn't work out, I'm sure they're going to be over to Memphis, and somebody else will be ready to take their place.
And the other thing, as you were talking there, I was just thinking about, not all of these stadiums have Statcast.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
if they're on the road, and somebody pitches, they may not have the statistical information there. I mean, they probably have ways of getting some of it themselves,
Hmm.
perhaps, but
Yeah.
um, so just factor that in. It's just, again, and I think that's one of the reasons. And I'm excited about Victor Scott II.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I'm really excited for when he's ready to come up, but I think that's part of, besides there's so many other reasons to let him go play AAA for the first time, but the idea of getting him, you know, up into the majors because he's had a good spring, that's just, I know that there's a need for it and stuff, but he's got 38 at bats, which is not bad. I mean, it's tied with Goldie, 7th on the team. But there's still just not that idea of, how's he going to bounce back when he struggles. That the speed is great, and I think he's going to be a really difference maker when he can make it up. But I just don't know that time is now.
I don't either, and I don't remember. I don't even think it was Cardinals related, but something that I was listening to this week talked about kind of his batted ball profile in the minors last year was kind of average,
Mm-hmm.
and like double or single A and double A last year, and so hasn't even hit triple A like you said, and so to me, we know the defense is there. We know he's got speed. Let's get him comfortable and ready that when he comes up, he's ready to hit and can maybe adjust, like you said, when he hits a part where he's not hitting as expected and struggles, that it just doesn't free fall from there. And I think the other thing too is um, he doesn't have a clear path to playing time with
Right.
assuming everybody's healthy, and we know Newt
Mm-hmm.
and Edmund are not healthy, and Edmund definitely will start the year on the IL. But I mean, they're coming back at some point, and so the Cardinals aren't really a team that, with their top guys, they want to bring them up and then send them back down just because of space. I mean, they want those
Right.
guys to play when they come up. I mean, we saw it with Walker. He was the guy that got rotated the least at the start of the season when they had 5 outfielders. So um, I, I don't see him making the raw, and I'm super excited about him. I mean, I grew up on those '80s teams,
Mhm.
and Vince Coleman was one of my favorite players, and so I see him as kind of a Vince clone almost, and I can't wait, and I think the team speed is terrible, besides Walker and Wynn, and so I'm excited. I can't wait for him to be here. I just don't think now is the time.
There have been some really good performances. I think it's interesting to look at some of these guys that kind of came into camp with a little bit of competition, and a lot of them have really kind of stepped up. I mean, again, Victor Scott was kind of that kind of guy that
Hmm.
wants to force himself into the issue, and he's had a pretty good spring. We talked about, Dylan Carlson with leading the team in home runs and RBI as well, I believe. And not the whole package isn't necessarily there, but it's a step in the right direction and enough to get him that center field job while Tommy Edmonds out, and then hopefully he can take it from there. Alec Burleson, hitting 357 on the spring. He kind of came in, 5 walks, 3 strikeouts. He's had
Hmm.
some good numbers at the plate, and he hasn't looked terrible in the outfield. It's not necessarily been, Gold Glove worthy or anything like that, but um, even Jose Fermin, who probably came to camp thinking he was going to play as well into a job, and then
Brandon Crawford.
Brandon Crawford showed up.
Yeah.
Although, when Crawford gets hit on the hand with the wrist with a pitch, and supposedly we'll be back in a couple of days, but who knows? But and he's had a remarkable. I think if we were going to pick somebody that may have had the most interesting spring, it might be Jose Fermin. Just overall, he seems like every time he's playing, he's coming up with something.
Yeah, and I maybe the question is, can he handle shortstop
Mhm.
on a long term? And so maybe I've heard yes and no. So I mean, I'm not an expert on a lot of these guys that have never. I'm not an expert on anything, but I mean, I haven't seen him play enough to really
Yeah.
know, and so for me, I thought he's a great backup for Wynn,
Hmm.
and we didn't need a Crawford. Obviously, front office thought differently, but yeah, I mean, he's a guy that definitely will get a longer look, and maybe a quicker call up, uh, once something happens, if that's needed. I'm glad you said Burleson, because really, I mean, if everybody was healthy, he probably wouldn't make the team. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um, I think I mean, he's hitting the ball well. He had a lot of underlying things last year that showed a lot of promise. Hit doesn't swing and miss much, and um, I think he's just going to take that next step. Having a year under his belt, but then you got the problem of once Newt and Edmund are back, there may not be room for him. So, you're essentially playing with 4 bench players now.
Mhm.
Herrera's going to be one, Crawford's going to be one, Carpenter's going to be one. So it's a fight for, and it's probably going to be Carlson, assuming everybody's healthy. But, um, I don't know that there was a point other than opening day last year where everybody was healthy, because Newt got
Well,
hurt in that opening
yeah.
game, I
Yeah.
think, or the second game. So
I think it was the first one. I think he slid
yeah,
it within that when he slid into third or something
yeah,
on
yeah,
himself.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, you're right, and it's going to be a very interesting. I've written a couple of posts this winter about the roster, but when you get down to, okay, well, I mean, you just talked about it. If Edmund and Newpar and Walker and Carlson are your outfielders, well, then all of a sudden you got to find a place for Brendan Donovan, right, in the
Mm-hmm.
infield. But the
Mm-hmm.
infield's fairly full. I don't. I mean, granted, baseball has a way of working these things out sometimes, but I'm very interested to see what they're going to do, especially if Tommy Edman actually gets back at any length of time. Now, the article that Katie Wu had up today, the interview with John Musial, he said that they keep getting good
Yeah, yeah,
results or getting good information or reports, I guess is what I'm trying to say, on Tommy Edman. But man, it doesn't look like it when you look at this team from the outside, right? I mean, we don't hear much about him, and every time we're hearing about him, he's getting stopped, and he's still not hitting anything, and that's feels like, especially since he hasn't hit at all this year now, feels like that's going to take some time to get him into some sort of groove.
yeah, and that stood out to me as well from Katie's article. It, it seemed like it was 10 days ago that they were shutting him down from swinging for a week. So what's
Mm-hmm.
happened in the last 2 or 3 days? And the thing that worries me is I think everybody would say that he's a better hitter from the right side. Well, that's where swinging from the right side is where he's having a lot of pain. And so, I think maybe they can see some of this depth and see that Burleson or somebody else can be a part of the bench or even a part-time starter, and they take it easy with Edmund. But I agree. I mean, wrists are tricky, and I mean that's something that could bother him for a while, and for to have surgery in October, and here we are a week from opening day, and he's still not really swinging a bat. I mean, that's worrisome to me.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how it goes. Um, but I mean, I continue to push my timetable back to now. I mean, I'm probably over exaggerating a bit, but I'm still a little bit like, if he's back in the first half, I'm almost going to be a little bit surprised. And hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully it's May or June or whatever. But again, if Dylan Carlson even hits like he's done this spring, which
Hmm.
again, we've put all the caveats on the spring numbers, but if he can do similarly to this, I think it becomes harder. It should become harder. I don't know that it does for this team, but it should be harder for them to put Tommy right back in at center field and put Carlson on the bench if he's being able to hold his own.
Yeah, and I think the thing with Carlson is, I mean, he seems healthy. He wasn't healthy last year, and really, I mean, you saw some of those swings from the left side last year that just looked like he was swinging underwater sometimes. And um, I guess what they're saying is he's swinging with intent. And watching the game today, that was kind of the one thing that I really wanted to watch for, was to see how he was swinging from the left side. And I mean, it was different. I mean, it was noticeably different from last year. And so I think I think two of those three home runs are from the left side. So I think that's really really positive. And if he's healthy, I mean, he's just he doesn't do anything great, but he does everything good. And so being able to play all three outfield positions, being able to switch hit if this left handed swing kind of keeps going the way it is, he's a valuable piece. And people forget, I mean, what is he, 25? Is he even turned
Uh,
25 yet? I mean,
Not
he's right
it's
there.
yeah, right in that area. I'm not even sure that
And
he's
so how
quite
many,
that old.
yeah, I mean, he's we just forget how young he
Yeah.
is. And yeah, he's had a frustrating couple of years here, but was good his rookie season, and finished third in rookie of the year voting, and was, the I think the double A player of the year when he was in Springfield. And so the pedigree is there. I mean, he's a coach's kid. He's been around the game forever. Just like I said, does everything well. Uh, I'm still a Dylan Carlson fan, and I'm happy that he's getting a chance to play with. Not that I wish anybody hurt, but
Right.
this could really make or break his future with the Cardinals. If he does well, then maybe he'll be around a little longer. But if he doesn't, with the three starters that they've got plus Scott coming up, he could be the next Tyler O'Neill that's traded sometime in the next year.
Yeah, he actually turned 25 back in October, so this is
Okay.
his
Yeah.
25. It's age 25 year, but yeah, I think you're right. I think that he knows. I feel like he knows that, but you know this is getting into what have you done for me lately territory. After 2 weaker years and the crunch that's out there, I well, he's one of those guys that if he can, and honestly, let's be fair, even if he hits well, that doesn't keep him from being, a guy that they don't try to trade, right? If he
Right.
has a
Right.
good first half and Edmund is back, you could see this team using him as, some part of piece for whatever if they may do some move at the trade deadline. I don't know that his Cardinal future is all that secure,
Right.
even no
Yeah,
matter
I
what he
agree.
does.
Yeah, I agree.
But it's a lot more secure if he can hit. I guess is the biggest
Well,
thing.
and you're right. I mean, maybe if he does hit, then he's more valuable to the team as that trade chip because
Right.
I mean they're going to need starting pitching if they can hang on in the Central and you get to the deadline and they're in it, they're going to need some starting pitching. I mean, not all five of these guys that they've got or Libertor or Thompson, as that sixth guy, they're not all going to play at what you hope. And so, you know, they're going to need something because it's the way it is right now. I don't think it's enough to compete in October, but with the Central, I think they've got enough that they could finish first in the Central with what they have. But I'm going to need more. I'm just going to need more.
It was interesting in Katie's article today. She talked to John Mozeliak about the slow start. What if there is a slow start, because the calendar's not well for them, right? I mean, they had 2 West Coast trips in April,
Right.
which is insane to some degree.
Yeah.
I I
Yeah.
I,
I didn't even
I know
realize that
everybody.
till today. Yeah.
Yeah, I know everybody likes this balanced schedule, but the
Not
the, the
everybody.
wrinkles
I
that
don't.
come.
No,
I
I
mean, I
don't.
agree. I don't either, but I am an old stick in the mud. So I understand that, but I think even if you do, you've got to realize that some of the wrinkles that they've put into this thing, trying to make sure everybody plays everybody else, aren't great. I mean, again, 2 trips to the West Coast. They're done with the Cubs by the beginning of the first weekend of August.
Oh
The
gosh.
Cubs' last trip into Bush is right before the All Star break, or right after, right in that time period. That just shouldn't be done, right? I mean, Cardinals and Cubs need to be playing in September at some point in time. But
Exactly. Yeah.
she asked about the slow start, and he said, "Look, the 2004 team was like 500 for the first 50 games or so, and then they won 105. This team's not going to win 105 games. But is there something to that? Is there something about not getting too worked up about maybe a less than 500 April?
Normally, I would say yes, but
Hmm.
but I've got recency bias with
Right.
2023, and I said the same thing last year. They're going to need pitching once they get to the end of July. Well, they didn't need to try to trade for it. They needed to get some pieces because they were completely out of it. And so,
Hmm.
while I still think that's the case, and granted, everything that went wrong last year. I That does weigh on me, and I don't know that some of those younger pitchers are ready to step up yet. They will be maybe next year, but when you think of a Tink Hence and a Takoa Roby and Gordon Graceffo, even McGreevy, I don't know that they're ready to fill in if one or two guys go down. I'm not convinced Libertor is. I think Thompson can, but I think Thompson could probably be better than one or two of them anyway. But I don't think the depth is there if injuries happen, and so I'm a guy that still believes in Ollie. I really believe in the offense. I believe in the bullpen. if the starters stay healthy, yeah, they can stay in it. And to me, the Cubs are the team that they need to compete with. I think some of the injuries with the Reds have probably pushed them back in my eyes anyway. So um, they can stay in it for sure, but I don't think it's a given like Mosaic. I mean, they are not the 2020 or 2004 team or 2005 team. Those were some of the best teams that I can remember, and I don't think the talent is quite there. You had guys more in your prime than a Goldschmidt that's 36 or an
Mhm.
Arenado that's 33. I mean, you had
Yeah.
you know MV3 that was all
Right.
in their prime.
Right. And the Cardinals, I mean, they even if you give them the two, they don't really have a third that goes in that level. Um, maybe New Bar can develop into something. Maybe Gorman can develop something. Walker at some point in time, but there's still room to grow. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, as the rotation in 2004 wasn't necessarily anything super spectacular, but
Sure.
it was solid enough. Um, and I don't know. Yeah, I think that you're right that there is a problem with depth on the team, but if you want to look at the silver lining, unless they're trying to replace Sonny Gray,
Yeah.
the bar is not high,
That's
right?
very
I
true.
mean,
Very true.
if a Libertor comes in, there's a good chance he could do what a Gibson is going to do or a Lynn is going to do. Um, again, if you have to try to replace Sonny Gray, then that's not happening with
Mm-hmm.
anything that they have. Um, it'll be interesting to see what Miles Michaelis does. He's had a good spring. Um, I feel like he's got a bit of extra motivation to be that kind of guy, that kind of leader, take over some of that Wainwright role and to really produce on the field. But, you know, you can want to all you want to. It doesn't matter, it matters what you do. And I will say, I don't know how that plays for a, 162 game season.
I'm a believer in Michaelis, and I look at when he had surgery, missed a season, he comes back and he only pitches, I don't know how many innings at the major league level, I can't remember, but 40-ish.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then he reels off 2 years in a row where he's over 200 innings or right at 200. And I think over the last 2 years he's in the top 7 in innings pitched. He's in the top 2 in starts made. And so I really feel like some of it last year was, again, there's pressure from everybody trying to step up a little bit because of how poorly the team was doing. But I think for him, there was probably some just fatigue in going from nothing to 40 innings to 210 or whatever, and then trying to duplicate that last year. And so I think there will be a little bit of a bounce back. I mean, again, he's not getting any younger. He's 35 or so. And so, um, we're not going to see probably what he was at his very best, but I think he's going to bounce back. I mean, is he a 2? Probably not. But there's a lot to be said right now in guys going 200 innings, even if it's a 4 or 4.2 ERA. I mean, there's a lot of value in it, and we're just seeing guys, 160, 170, and that's a good season. And to have those extra 30 or 40 innings from a starter that can really save your bullpen is pretty big.
Yeah. Now 4.2 is fine. When you get into the 5.2s and 6s, I don't think you want those innings
No, no.
necessarily, but that's kind of what we've seen especially out of Gibson this spring. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Again, you can't talk about spring without continuing to bring up the caveats. I get that, but he's had 3 starts so far, and he's never left the start with an ERA under 10. You know, um, it's you're working on stuff. It's a veteran guy, but there's also, and I've talked a lot with my Gateway co-host David Jones about some of this, and his point is for a guy that is is not a strikeout guy, that's a veteran guy, that's going to have to, you know, pitch to contact. Seeing these kind of results makes you afraid that the stuff isn't there to really get away with pitching to contact. Now, again, we'll know when the calendar flips over, basically. But um, are there, even though we don't really take a whole lot of stock in spring stats, does some of that raise some red flags for you?
It does. Gibson and Lynn and Michaelis, these guys aren't trying to win a spot. I mean, they're guaranteed a
Mm-hmm.
spot in the rotation, and so I don't look at their performance quite like I do some others. I mean, and I have nothing to back this off of, but say the first start, maybe he threw 90% fastballs. And honestly, that first start, I think the first pitch was a home run, and then the next player hit a home run, and then he did
Mm-hmm.
fine. And
Yeah.
so, and of course, you saw the quotes after this week. Well, he gave up 2 homers that were just wind aided. Well, the Cardinals didn't hit any
Yeah.
wind aided home
Yeah.
runs, and so,
Exactly.
um, he's pitched to contact. He led the American League in hits. He's going to give up hits. It's what's on base when he gives up the hits, and so yes, I'm concerned, but probably not much more than I was anyway with him or Lynn. I mean, I think signing one of those guys would have been fine. Signing both of them, not ideal. And to do it so early, I know they were trying to jump the market. When they're typically they kind of wait and see how it develops. And the
Mm-hmm.
1 year that they don't do it, you've got Jordan Montgomery still sitting out there, and so
Yeah.
it's kind of darned if you do, darned if you don't. And I don't know. I guess I'm not much more worried, maybe tiny smidge than I was coming into the season. But I don't have. I mean, I think Matz is probably the number 3 guy right now. That's where I've got Lynn and Gibson as 4 and 5, and I
Yeah.
don't know which one I would assign to which number there. But no, I mean, I maybe a little bit more concerned. If he can come in this last start before the season and look great, then you kind of forget about these other 3 starts.
Yeah, probably. But I do get concerned with, and he's done it in all three of his starts.
Right.
Lynn has done it at least once that I can think
Hmm.
of without looking it up, of getting behind early, right? I mean, you're talking about it, how Gibson gave up the 2 home runs in his first start. He gave
Hmm.
up 4 runs in the start against Houston. He gave up 2 runs against Miami. And then, when the Cardinals then turned around and staked him to a 5-run lead, he gave it all back. Um, but playing from behind is hard,
And
and
they
we
did
saw that
that
a
a
lot
lot
last
last
year.
year. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly, and more so when you're losing. I mean,
Hmm.
if you keep losing, and then the next night you come out and you're down 2-0 before you even get to bat, it's just like, here we go again, and it's very. I think that kind of stuff snowballs, and so I guess that's what a little bit concerned. And in the spring, starting pitcher giving up runs in the first inning probably he doesn't have the facing minor leaguers excuse, right? I mean, he's facing major league pitchers, and maybe he's working on stuff again, all that stuff. But it would just be nice to see Kyle Gibson go out and throw a scoreless first inning, right? I think
Yeah.
that's where
Yeah.
we're at right now.
Well, and you're right. I mean, I don't, as much of a numbers guy as I am, I'm not a guy that thinks a 5 inning 2 run game is equal to every 5 inning 2 run game,
Mm-hmm.
because I mean, I think if you give it those 2 runs up in the first, especially in the top of the first, and you put your team in a hole, I mean, that puts pressure on everybody, as opposed to, well, the other guy may have pitched 5, been up 7-0 when he gave up those 2 runs, and
Right.
so I do, yeah, I think you're right that if they continually are playing from behind like they did last year, I mean, we're going to see them struggle as a team because you saw it weigh on the offense.
Yeah, I'm with you on the sign Lynn, sign Gibson, don't sign both type of thing. And I think that the way the market played out, like you were talking about, if they didn't sign both of those guys, they might have had enough money to get a Snell on the contract that he got,
Right.
right? I mean, they would probably be bumping the luxury tax a lot closer than they'd like to, but they could have been in there when you sign, the $12 million that you gave to Gibson. That pretty much puts you out of, again, with Jordan Montgomery out there, you can't go out and say, hey, we'll give you a $25 million contract for this year with options and all that stuff, because you're at the luxury tax, and they're not going to do that. Whether they should or not, it's a totally different story, but they're just
Right.
not going to do that. So it is frustrating. We've talked about it all winter long.
Yeah.
How that's, and I mean, the pressure is on, and like you were saying, a slow start normally wouldn't be an issue. Now, maybe there's more of it.
Let me
How
ask you
much?
something. Let me
Yeah,
ask
go
you
ahead.
something real quick, because this is something that I've thought about, and um, I haven't really gotten an outside perspective. But to me, it felt like the front office and ownership was not in lockstep with each other this year, because it seemed like Mosaic was talking about $200 million
Mm-hmm.
payrolls, and ownership was talking less. And then you get well, we don't know about our TV deal. And then they get to winter warm up and like, no, we're good. That didn't matter. And it seems like, and I, maybe I'm just reading into it too much. And Mosaic's coming off uh, a, the worst year any of these people have seen
Mm-hmm.
in the last contract that he's got, and maybe he's feeling a little more pressure than ownership. But did you see anything or feel just a disconnect between them, which I've never sensed? But I, that, talking about that luxury tax or the 200 million mark, it seemed like Mosaic was willing to go there, but the DeWitts never were, to me.
I mean, it's possible. Um, I did write about that at some point in time this winter, because I thought maybe that there was going to be a wrinkle where they were going to have to, because we all knew. I mean, I think everybody knew that no matter what happened with Bally's, the Cardinals were going to get paid from them, because they were going to be like, you know, the Cardinals and, man, I don't even know who else Bally has that was going to be guaranteed, because that was their big ticket guys, right? I mean, the
Hmm.
Cardinals are still first or second in ratings all the time. Even last year when they
Yeah.
were bad, they were like, third or something in TV ratings.
Hmm.
Um, the market's there. They were going to get their money. The Padres, obviously they dropped off, and people like that were like, the Royals. Okay, we don't know if they're going to have the money. Sure,
Yeah.
but the Cardinals were going to have the money. They knew that for 2024 at least. Going forward, that's a wholly different story. But so they knew that. And then Mo comes out after the winter and says, "Hey, we're going to try to get back up to that 200 million spot." And then it wasn't too long after that. So I thought there was going to be something where they were going to have to like give up some of that money to, in some sort of settlement
Mm.
that got the rights out. Maybe like it's, Valley got out of it, and the Cardinals, would say, "Hey, we'll give up part of our guaranteed amount to get our rights back," or something of that nature.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And that didn't happen. We didn't see that. So yeah, it's very possible that they were off. It's possible that they got some projections. It's possible that the front part of ticket sales was slower than they liked. Like Mo makes his comments, and then they start seeing that they're running 10-20% behind what they normally are on season
Yeah.
ticket sales. And they're like, well, we got to pull back a little bit, because that's a big part of how they budget. Um, and I think if you talk to Mo now, he would say, Well, we are in that range, but it's all about how you measure it, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Luxury tax payroll, they are at the 210, I think, but that's counting, player benefits, it's counting this and that. It also was a little bit concerning that it sounded like they started counting like the extra coaching staff into part of this, which I didn't think was a fair thing, right? I
no,
mean,
no,
one, they don't make that much money, but two, they've never counted that before, so why now?
no. When they leave to be a coach in college softball for more money, they're not
Yeah,
making much.
exactly. Yeah, women's softball coach, assistant women's softball
Right, right,
coach.
right.
I mean, SEC pays well, but I don't know that they shouldn't be paying more than Major League Baseball.
Correct.
Um, I mean, not in baseball, maybe in football they probably would. But yeah, it's so I don't know. I think there may have been a little bit of disconnect. I feel like they're on the same page. I think they talk enough. They just may have, been off a little bit. It was very interesting. I've had this discussion with a couple people now, and I don't remember who brought it up first. Maybe David, but there was this when they signed Ollie to that extension at the conference, press conference. John Mozeliak made some sort of offhand comment of after the year we had, a lot of people probably want to see the both of us gone, and Bill DeWitt said, "Well, no, what all three of it, none of us had a good year, or something like that." And
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of thought
yeah.
about what does it mean for an owner to not have a good year, and you wonder if there was some spending that Mo wanted to do that Bill DeWitt didn't think they needed to, and then it turned out that yeah, they needed it. I will say that if and that maybe helped them to spend a little bit more this year, maybe that helped them, be more open to getting somebody like Sonny Gray. Um, but to me, it still just feels like, and you tell me what you think on this, but it still feels to me like the front office thinks last year was a fluke,
Yeah,
and
absolutely. Yeah.
I don't know how much of a fluke it was.
I I was fairly confident going into last year.
Hmm.
You think if even if with Michaelis doing what he did, if and Montgomery had a career year, you
Hmm.
think Flaherty's finally had a regular off season and he's coming in healthy. I mean, you just thought, I mean, this is it. You got two guys coming off MVP seasons. I was really confident, but
Well, and Wainwright was pitching like
yeah,
a
I mean,
really a end of his career, but still a good pitcher. Then, like
yeah,
Adam Wainwright said, he never wanted to be mediocre, so he went from really good to really not.
it yeah, I don't think it was. I mean, yes, and as I said, everything that could go wrong went wrong.
Mhm.
But just that I guess the safety nets weren't there. Maybe I don't know. I mean, I don't. I'll say that it's not a fluke in that I could see it going that way this year, for
Yeah,
sure. So, um, I don't think it will go as badly, but I could see them missing the playoffs this year for sure.
yeah,
And
yeah. I mean,
and
it's
that's unacceptable in Cardinal Nation. We expect to be in the playoffs.
yeah, I agree. I do think that if the Cardinals are if they finish a couple games out, because I think we're pretty confident that nobody's winning a wild card in the NL Central
Right.
this year.
Yeah.
As they finish a couple games out, people are not going to be happy, but at least it's progress. Maybe you point to a game here and there. You say, okay, we're right there. You know, I don't know. I mean, I think there's a good section of the fan base that would just say no, it's not the playoffs, so we can't. But at least I think you could at least say, okay, at least they're close. They're almost back. That was too big of a hole to dig out of. They're almost back. But if they're a 500 team or less than 500 team, then yeah, I think that you're talking about that contract extension that might as well
Mm.
not exist.
Right.
You're talking about Mo finding another spot to work. I think he's still in the organization, but he moves over somewhere or something, or decides to retire a year early. I think you see a lot of turmoil if they're not successful this year. And I don't know how this organization handles turmoil, because they didn't handle it very well last year at all.
No, no. And yeah, I agree. I mean, I think Mo would move to a different title of some kind. I don't think and uh, I know we don't have a lot of time, but the Ollie contract to me, I mean, I didn't mind it because I think it tells the players, okay, you don't need to look over your shoulder in case you start off bad. That because
Mhm.
I think the players love Ollie. Um, you know, people say, well, yeah, they're going to say that publicly. Well, they don't have to. They don't have to
Mm.
comment. And I really, even Pujols and Molina just raved about him, and it's I think it just shows that, hey, we believe in this team, we believe in him. Let's go out and do the job. But if it went wrong, I don't think there's. I mean, we saw it with Matheny. They're not going to hesitate to fire him if it goes sideways again. So, but I do like the message that it sent to the players and to the team and even Ollie, that hey, Molina's not going to be your next manager. You know, if in the middle of the season or at the end of the season necessarily.
Yeah, we still haven't figured out if Yachty knows how to get back to
No,
mainland yet.
there's
So
a basketball game or
um,
something going on probably.
maybe. Um, yeah, I think, I mean, you hope that the players play a little looser, because they know they're not playing for Ollie's job. Because they did. You're right. I mean, they made some comments last year during how things were going bad, of how much they felt bad because of the heat that Marmol was getting because of their performance. So, um, yeah, I don't know. I think it's you don't usually see this kind of import on a season, and not not really feel confident about it either, right? I mean,
Yeah,
this thing can go a whole lot of different ways, um, and it feels like a lot more of them are bad than they are good.
I agree. I agree. I mean, you really have to have everybody hit on at least close to expectations for this to go
Mhm.
right. Not everybody, but the majority of the players. You want to see a little bit of a rebound for Goldie and Arenado, but even if they are similar to what they were last year, but some of these younger players step up, I think they're still in good shape. But um, it's not going to take much to turn it sideways. And again, I go back to the starting pitching, especially with that. And maybe if it goes by quickly and Montgomery's still out there, I'm just shocked that he's not signed yet. Shocked,
Yeah.
especially not having a
Hmm.
qualifying offer attached to him.
Yeah. Yeah. It really felt like Boris and them were trying to get Snell signed first so they could set the market for Montgomery. But man, by now, I don't know. And it's interesting. I was reading the Athletic today. They had their rankings of pitchers, from ace to, you know,
Hmm.
just a guy, is what they call them. But that was from, they polled insiders and scouts and executives and stuff like that. And one executive, because Montgomery was actually sitting right, I think, right around where Sonny Gray is, like 35th or something in his top
Oh
50 or
wow.
something. And they asked an executive basically said, "Look, we all think he's a number three, and he wants to get paid like a number two.
Yeah.
And if the industry has one expectation of you and you have something else, it can be difficult to bridge that gap, until you get to the point where it's like, I'll sign anything. I just want to play." And he's not there yet, obviously, because I imagine he's got if not official offers, they know that, as they said, okay, we'll play for $15 million this year. There's a line of teams, right? I mean, that are,
Right. Right.
even the Cardinals might be like, hey, maybe we'll talk, but until they're ready to drop that, I mean, you can sit out and hold it out for your principals, and that's fine. But you also realize you hold out too long, then it's like, will people come back around and find you interesting at some point in time. I don't know.
Yeah, I think he's always been kind of a 3 or 4 type of starter, and then last year really, I mean, played well with the Cardinals, obviously, but then ends up being a key part of a World Series winning team. You come off thinking, well, I can do what other guys have done in the past, but it, I think the industry is starting to change a little bit on these starting pitchers, and you've got
Yeah.
guys that hit free agency at 30 or 31, and Montgomery's 31 already, and he's asking for a 6-year deal. Nobody's, like you said, I mean, 6 years and 170, 180 million, nobody's going to do that. And that's what he was asking for, at least what reports said, and similar to Aaron Nola's deal. But he's not that. And he hasn't proven things like Nola had. And Nola stayed with the same team that he was with that knew him and know what, comfortable with him and all that. So I yeah, I'm surprised he's still out there because, especially without the qualifying offer attached. But obviously, and Boris has done amazing things for a lot of players. But this year, this winter just did not go his way.
No, it doesn't seem like it for sure. It's we kind of thought Aaron Nola was being a little bit hasty by going right back to Philadelphia, but he may have made
Yeah,
at
yeah,
least saved himself a heartburn of the winter, if nothing else. So,
absolutely, absolutely.
all right, well, we're hit about the end of this, but I think it's. Well, I don't usually go off the Cardinal script very much, but there's a story out today that I think we're going to be talking about for a while. So I want to hear what you think about the Shohei Ohtani interpreter betting situation that may be a scandal. We don't necessarily know yet, but there's this is an interesting way to start off the baseball season, isn't
I bet you have all kinds of puns here.
it?
See what I did there?
No,
Um,
no, I wouldn't take those odds.
I I hate it because as a baseball fan, I absolutely love Shohei Ohtani. And I mean, to me, he's one of those that is a must watch if he's on TV, pitching or hitting. And um, I think he kind of got vilified a little bit this winter by the contract that he got and all these things. And so I think he was so beloved by everybody, and now he even once he signed, he wasn't. And now people are really just like, oh, he did it. He was the one betting. Um, it I think the most confusing thing right now. We don't have a lot of facts, but just the two different messages that came out. With the interpreter doing a 90-minute interview, and then immediately the representatives were just like, nope, he's lying, he stole it. And I don't know. I mean, I really want to believe that it wasn't Otani betting, and my belief, and I don't have a lot to base this on, is that he covered the bet. Well, it's an illegal bookie or whatever. He's going to get in trouble if he covered it, and so then they realize that, turn around and say, oh, he stole it. And you know we don't know yet, and we maybe never will know. I don't know. I would hate to see him get suspended over just trying to help his friend, but I mean the rules are the rules. So
Mm-hmm.
um, it's interesting because as much as I hated that series starting the season when nobody's watching and all that, I mean you had so much excitement behind the Dodgers, and one day this comes out and then Yamamoto falls on his face in last one inning, and so all this talk of the Dodgers has turned on its head very quickly, and I do think that it's going to be a story for a while. I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
what do you think of how it's played out even so far?
I mean, it was interesting. I mean, you're right. I think Craig Calcaterra had a post today that was free that was shared that kind of listed out like three possibilities that, from what we know right now, and one was somehow the guy actually did steal the money, and he put out the story that Shohei was helping him, but he actually stole it. But he also laid out the issues with that. Is it's not like he was paying cash or using Venmo or anything of that nature. I mean, he's doing wire transfers, which takes some authority,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of that kind of sounds like not just somebody that's an interpreter would have. So that seemed a little bit weird. But then and the second, I think the most likely, like you said, is Shohei decided he'd cover the bets or try to help his friend out here. But again, that's going to cause some major problems. And when you start backing up and say, "Oh no, he stole it," well, then you run the risk of this story getting bigger, right? We always know the cover up's worse than the actual crime. And then, of course, the third option is that this was an Ohtani thing. He was putting the bets down, and um, the interpreter is kind of the go between Patsy type of guy. And now that he's been thrown under the bus, he may say some things. He may tell his side of the story. Again, we don't know. That's a lot of that. I think it's very interesting. Ohtani is such a unique individual, right? I mean,
Yeah.
he shows up to camp and, oh, by the way, I'm married, but he won't talk about his wife. It took them until they got to Japan, I think, to find out she was, I think, a women's basketball player or something over there. And
Yeah.
this idea of he wouldn't tell anybody what his dog's name was. He, was supposedly was holding teams, holding it against teams if they let it known that they were meeting with him, or
Yeah.
stuff like
Yeah.
that. He is definitely a unique breed. So, I think he could go any way with this. I think it's going to be something that overshadows for a while, and I don't, today, Manfred kind of came out and said, "Oh, we're not investigating Otani." Well, I think they've got to, right? I mean, if nothing else, to just kind of clear everything up. I don't think you can just take him at his word, even if he's the face of baseball. I think you've got to make sure that face of baseball is clean, because otherwise, I mean, you can't run a risk of another Pete Rose.
Yeah. And I know they said he's not under investigation right now, or however it was phrased. I do think they absolutely have to investigate it, and I would assume that they will. But I guess I mean maybe Major League Baseball's stance is that he's over there. We just found out.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't opened an investigation yet, but it just poor phrasing, because I don't think fans are going to allow them to, like you said, just take his
Right.
word. So, um, you know, I guess the good thing for the Cardinals is that this is going to overshadow their first few games back in the States. So we get them,
Hopefully.
maybe get them at the right time when we thought we were going to get them at a bad time. So, yeah, I hate it again. I mean, just as a baseball fan, I hate it, and I hope that it's not true. But at the same time, if he did it and it was illegal, you got to pay the price.
Yeah. And I think, from what I gather, this all kind of came to light because there was a federal investigation of
Mm-hmm.
the bookie, and so it may be one of those things where baseball's going to have to, they've done it before, done it a lot of times, right? Where I think they did it maybe last with the Trevor Bauer situation, where they let the legal system run its course before they do their stuff, and maybe that's what they're talking about here too. I don't know, but yeah, there's going to have to be some more clarity on this, and I know Otani doesn't want to talk to the press. Maybe he can't now that he doesn't have an interpreter.
Oh gosh, yeah.
But I think at some point he's going to have to, and he's going to have to take some questions. I mean, and I think we saw that with McGuire when he came back as hitting coach. With all the steroid issues, he admitted it. And then he had a press conference, and you probably remember this
Yeah, yeah.
because you're old, you're enough to do at the first day of spring training, and he sat and he answered like every question that they had. I mean,
Yeah.
he did, and he was honest about it. And you know, you could argue with how he, what he said or how he believed it. If because he said he believed it and didn't help him any or whatever the case may be. You can argue that. I believe he believed that. Let's put it that way. I don't think that may not be true, but I think
True.
that he believed
Yeah.
it. But after that, we kind of really thought when he was hired as the coach, this would be over the whole season. And it was like done and gone, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
he answered it, he got up there, and it moved on. And that may be what Ohtani's going to have to do here, if it is just in him, even if it is hey, yeah, I turned out I was trying to help a friend, and I realize now that that's not legal. I've run into legal. I realize I'm going to cooperate with authorities, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. Um, then maybe it goes away to some degree. But until then, I don't know that it does.
No, and I get not speaking last night after their game or this morning or whatever you want to call it, but yeah, he's going to have to answer it, and he's going to have to answer it before they open up in L.A. And I'm sure that he's already being coached as we speak on how to do that. Um,
That was
I'm
a
sure.
long plane ride home. So
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I do agree. He needs to address it, and he needs to address it immediately, and he needs to be truthful because this day and age, I mean, the truth's going to come out at some point. And
yeah,
I even though if I kind of said Major League Baseball may try to hide it, but there's just too much out there right now. I mean, the bookie or whatever could have evidence
mm-hmm.
to disprove whatever somebody says that's incorrect. So
Yeah.
I hate it because it's a black eye at the start of a season, not just just on baseball. So I'd like to see the season start a little differently than it's going to, um, but something about watching games will cure a lot of that, I think.
Probably so. Probably so. So, all right. Well, it's been another enjoyable conversation with you, Richard. And let's see, y'all are planning another. Your next recording will be Sunday again. Do you think?
Yeah, Truman put it on. I think he started an Instagram account and said Sundays, and we missed it last week with some games and a school dance and some other stuff he had going on, and not a lot of news. I mean, the Ollie news was big, but we'll cover that. But yeah, we're going to try to stick to, especially now that the season's starting. We're going to stick to trying to put something out every Sunday. And
All right.
I
Well,
want to
if you
say before we go, you've had absolutely amazing guests here. So I'm sorry to kind of ruin this and pull it way down, but man, I've really, I mean, I always enjoy talking to you and being on here, and I appreciate what you've done for us, and 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 I've said it that you're kind of the you set the standard. You and Alan really set the standard for us in doing it in a more positive and clean way and all that. But I've really enjoyed all the guests that you've had, and you've had some great ones. So um, I'm not nearly up there, but I appreciate being on.
Well, we have had a nice run of guests, and I think it continues with you being here, and enjoyed talking to people as we fill in for Alan. This has been last 2 or 3 years as he's been
Hmm.
coaching. It's been a challenge to find some people, but I think people are kind of getting used to that coming on spots, and so it's been nice. And yeah, had some different people this year as well. So, but always glad to have you here, and look forward to it. If you're not following the Playing Catch Pod, you can follow that actually Playing Catch Pod right there on Twitter. But definitely subscribe. That's probably wherever you get your podcasts. If you're listening to us here, you probably can listen to Richard and Truman on the same thing. So go find that and subscribe. Next week we got Russ Robinson, who's going to join us from Redbird Brants. But until then, For Richard, I'm Daniel. Good night.
Go Cardinals.
They just won't go away.
And we're back on our weekly chat with Mr. Coach Alan Medlock. He's coming to us talking about the Tulsa Hell Rangers. And Alan, you and I were talking a little bit before we got started here, but this was spring break week, and let's talk about the games, and then I want to talk a little bit about motivation.
You got it.
Well, go ahead and now you said you had a pretty successful run.
Yeah. I'm sorry. This is, since we're trying a new recording option, it looks different on my end. I didn't know if I was even on. My apologies. So no. We started spring break for us. It's we have a longer one. We went Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of last week, and then we have a professional day, which is teacher training on Thursday. And those, with all the kind of the pressure that we're under and everything now, as you guys probably know, through the state of Oklahoma, we that Thursday you have to prepare for a pretty long day. So we actually gave them the day off on Thursday, and then came back and hit the road early Friday morning and went to Oklahoma City and played our rivals for a doubleheader, where we ended up sweeping them. So it was big for us. So we got to celebrate down there a little bit. But we came back and played Monday with weather that was about 25 degrees colder than it was on Saturday and Sunday. And we did not play very well and didn't play very enthused. Some of those things that happened. So we're going to finish. That was the end of our spring break. We had another game on Tuesday that ended up canceling. So we're walking away with a 2-1 spring break, which is good for us. 4-6 on the year, which is really good for us. And then I gave them the rest of the week off for just to kind of reset, be with family, be with friends, and we'll get back with a light workout, do the field on Sunday, and then right back at it on Monday. So we're in a pretty good spot. I was a little disappointed in them on Monday just because we got up early, we met at the school, we ate, we headed out, we got there. I heard a lot of complaining about how cold it was, and they just weren't in the mindset to go and stay on a winning streak. I think they were kind of content with the 2 wins they got on Friday. We scored 3 runs in the first inning, and the Husky came back and scored on us in the first inning, and we were just playing from behind the rest of the time. Just didn't have a lot of momentum. And I know we were talking about you kind of had a follow-up question about motivation on days like this, and for high schools it's hard. I mean, I would much rather coach a team after a good half day or full day of school than an off day, because everybody's off their rhythm. They're just out of their routine, and it's really tough to kind of get that motor running sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, definitely has to be. I mean, you get that some with Saturdays, I imagine, as well, as
Sure.
That there is that, it is a different routine. There's also that idea of, there are other things I can do. Now, I'm not saying these guys don't want to play baseball, but
Sure.
At the end of a day, it's one thing. But when you've got the whole day in front of you, sometimes you don't want to spend 2 hours on a bus going somewhere.
Well, and you're right, and I mean and our kids as well are, not many of our kids have their own transportation. So they're all trying to organize where they're staying the night tonight and tomorrow, and what friends they're going to hang out with, what they have planned. So there's a lot on their mind, and I'm cognizant of that, and I understand. It's just sometimes it's tough to get them to look like they're 100% locked in on days like that. But this is any sport. I know coaches across the board, fall break for football coaches is really tough. Spring, that last day of semester for basketball coaches is extremely tough. You historically play pretty bad on that. So it's just sometimes you just, high school kids, and especially in our situation, it's just tough to kind of keep up that competitive fire all the time.
So what do you do for that? I mean, is there anything as a coach you can do to try to get them in the right mindset, or get them out of whatever, focus they're looking at, and get them back on the game?
Well, it kind of goes along with my approach with everything. It's just make the situation fun. I usually try to have a pretty good breakfast for them, and just to kind of get the motor running a little bit. We'll have the cage going. We have a lot of music in the morning. I could be up. I don't sleep very late at all, and I'm usually up before the sun most of the time. So it's easy for me to go in there with my motor running, and a lot of the kids just aren't up, they don't have that same situation. So you got to kind of come in, you got to talk a little bit of baseball, you got to talk a little bit of life, and you just have to, have high energy all the time. High energy, and is one of my mottos: positive input equals positive output. Keep going that way, and just do your best and understand that this happens to the best of them. I selfishly, I came home Monday night and I was kind of wearing it a little bit. I was like, man, okay, how can I get through to these guys? And I reached out to a couple of my mentors and I said, hey, what did you do in this situation? He said, the sad part is, he said, that's on them. He goes, it's one of those deals to where, they're kids, kids through and through. And sometimes it's going to work out. Sometimes it's not. And I said, yeah, that's true. That's true. So we got out and had a pretty good day of practice Tuesday and walked away feeling pretty confident about the schedule coming up and what we have for the rest of the season. I mean, when I look in the long scheme of things too, I get disappointed that they aren't competing at this level. But then I look and I said all of our long-term team goals are there. So
Yeah.
nothing's lost. We just finished our first 9-game stretch of the season. We're in a good spot, and you turn around and you get ready to roll, and hopefully you'll be healthy after 5 days off.
Yeah, and I think that, like you said, good practice on Tuesday probably gives them in the right mindset when they go into that break. And better to go out on a bit of a high note than to have a rough day on Monday and then have to sit around for a week.
Yeah, exactly. We went out and let them have some fun. And then we, fed them pizza afterwards and said, hey, eat as much as you want, drink as much soda as you want, but, go and have a good break. And I mean, in our group chat, I gave them a pretty good message. I said, hey, just do me a favor. I said, why don't you try to get a little bit better over the break? Go play catch with a buddy. Go lift weights. Go have a home run derby at small ball park. Just go and get a little bit better and be ready, because our goals are still alive and active, and we're in a pretty good position. So most of them responded pretty well about that, and that makes you proud to know that you have a good group that's ready to answer the bell when you need it.
Talk a little bit about we've talked a lot about maybe some of the negatives of this week, but you did get that doubleheader sweep. What
Yeah,
what worked for you there?
Well, the funny thing about that is, one of our rivals. I'm really good friends with with their head coach, and we get along really well. They're a size bigger than we are. They're a 6A school, but they play in an extremely tough district, similar to ours, but they have some 6A blue bloods in it, and they get beat up on our side of the state quite a bit. They're demographically the same, socioeconomically very similar to what we have. So we're more even than we think. Well, they're winless on the year, and that's one of those situations you never want to go into that situation.
Yeah.
So we come out and we scored quite a few runs on them in the opener, and then and kind of let them back in it a little bit. We have a guy that's kind of struggling, but I'm going to talk about him here in a little bit. Pitching wise, he's kind of lost his way a little bit, basically overthrowing and pulling the ball a little bit. But we think we can get him right before things get super serious for us. But he came in and closed the game for us, and it made it a little bit interesting. But we walked away with game one, and that was one of those games where you kind of get that monkey off your back, and then you're ready to go. And then in game two, they came in and pitched their number one, and that was neck and neck. And the guy that I talked about last week, our secret weapon, our freshman, we brought him in, and he really quieted their bats. So kept us in the game, took us to the bottom of the seventh where we were the home team, and our pitcher Cyrus, who I was going to give the player of the week to this week, he stepped up with a walk-off double for us to win it, to sweep the doubleheader, and that's big for us. I mean, last year we went down there with a really, really cocky mindset, and they put it to us. And that didn't set very well with me last year, because then it gave us a string of about 4 or 5 games where we didn't play very well. So walking away with the 2 wins there, as much as you would want that third on Monday, we'll take what we've got and be pretty proud of the way that the guys competed.
Yeah, that sounds it. I mean, always exciting to have a walk off for sure. So
yeah.
All right. Well, what's coming up? I mean, like you said, you've got to get them back into the groove of things, working on the field on Sunday. Then what's the schedule look like after that?
The Monday and Tuesday, we have our last stretch of just of teams that I would consider heavy favorites for us. They're really good. They're at Collinsville. They're right up the road. You've heard of the Owasso Juggernaut, the baseball 6A squad that's up here that wins, if not every year, every other year. They're really good. Well, Collinsville is right outside of Owasso, and they're in that little corridor. They really do play some good baseball. So we go. They visit us on Monday, and we go there on Tuesday, and that is the tougher part of our district. We get that over with on Tuesday, play those 2 games, and then we travel to our first tournament of the year, and we'll be there Thursday and Friday. So it'll be a good long week of baseball, but we kind of have our eyes on walking away with at least 2 to 3 wins this week and keeping the pace with what we wanted to do all year.
Well, let's hope that continues, and we have a good report then for next week. So look forward to hearing about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we, Monday and Tuesday, we just want to be able to compete. Wednesday and Thursday, we want to maybe do something special where we can get in that winner's bracket, maybe put some wins together and do some things that we've kind of intended to do the last 3 years and see where we are after that. And then you build a little bit of momentum and things can be pretty good for us heading down the rest of March into April.
Sounds good. It's hard to believe we're getting to, getting close to that halfway point, doesn't it? Or
yeah, you get to about the 1st of April. You're usually there. You've got your first month in, and we usually go to the second weekend of May. So yeah, we got a lot of baseball left, but it's going by quickly.
Yeah. Well, we look forward to talking to you every week as we go through it.
All right. Well, always a pleasure. I appreciate it.
Right now, their leading hitter all time against the Cardinals in postseason play at the plate. Beltran has murdered Cardinal pitching over the last 2 postseasons that he's played against them. Here tonight, he has doubled and scored. He's flied to left. He's grounded out, and he's walked. Bases loaded, 2 out. Cardinals up by 2 in the pitch. Fastball, Steve right ball. Carlos Beltran during the regular season had 41 home runs, had 116 runs batted in. He has 3 home runs in this series. He's at the plate with the bases loaded, 2 down, the pitch. Curveball, swinging a tap foul, and the Cardinals are 1 strike away from going to Detroit and the 2006 World Series. Adam Wainwright gets a new baseball. Rubs it up, stands on, looks in with the bases loaded, 2 out. Cardinals leading 3-1 here in the bottom of the 9th inning. One of the most dangerous hitters in the business at the plate, Carlos Beltran. He is ready, so is Wainwright. The 0-2 delivery. Curve struck him out looking. The Cardinals are going to Michigan to take on the Tigers. They mob Adam Wainwright on the mound. They are National League champions and headed for Detroit as they mob the pitcher. And now Yadier Molina, in comes the bullpenners to pile on. The Cardinals have won this game 3-1 on a 2-run home run by their catcher Yadier Molina, and they're still out on the infield celebrating. What a ball game this has been.